Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, there's something to be said when you take creepy to a different level, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals. We pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do. You can listen to the podcast. You can subscribe. Hit that old subscribe button. Give us the old 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts. We're at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, pretty much all platforms. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, do not hesitate to follow us on social media. You can find us on the Facebook, the Twitter, and the Instagram at where else? At In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to write about it and talk about it, and watch it, obviously, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, as I recover from COVID, from the post-TIFF landscape. Yes, I did get COVID during the latter half of the festival. Nobody's fault, but c'est la vie. We still got plenty of good content coming out because guess what? Something we did manage to do before we got deathly ill is talk to one of the stars of a film that played the festival, which just happens to be in theaters now. It is called Pearl from writer-director Ty West, obviously, and it's a prequel of sorts to X as a part of his trilogy, and it's just a fantastic piece of work, and it's really, to put it mildly, it is creepy as all goddamn hell, but again, I don't want to spoil too much for you on this one. If you know X, you will understand the story of how Pearl became who she was. And that's even more unsettling than maybe X was. This takes horror to a different level, and it kind of it drapes it in Technicolor and, you know, of the likes of Douglas Sirk, but it feels like very David Lynchian almost at the same time. It is a gloriously bent piece of cinema. If you enjoyed X, Pearl takes it to the very next level because it just gets under your skin and it just creeps you the fuck out. I mean, and I cannot stress that enough. It is an excellent piece of cinema. But while at the festival, we had the unique pleasure of talking with one of the stars, like I said, Mr. David Corenswet, who plays the projectionist, who is this really sort of nebulous character of both hope but also a little bit of sleaziness at the same time. And it's, oh man, he does a good job in this, and we had a great conversation. We got to talk a little bit about just how he got the job and acting in these moments with Mia as Pearl and sort of embracing Ty's vision for this day-glow, Technicolor dripping sort of horror movie that Ty West has given audiences, and it's a beautiful thing to see. But enjoy our talk with David. In case you haven't already checked out Pearl, go check it out again because it's such a good movie. But enjoy our talk with David as two Davids go at it, and because, quite frankly, it's a pretty good one. All right, well, obviously, man, first off, just thank you so much for the time today. I mean, it's a film festival. It's your first one. You must be running like mad, so I appreciate this.
My pleasure. I mean, to talk to another David, I'd do it anytime.
David, I like it. But I mean, honestly, like, congrats on this movie, man. I absolutely loved it. I mean, walk me through, I guess, getting the pitch to read for it or getting the script to sort of what your initial reactions were to this character.
Well, one of the things that stuck out initially was that Ty did not ask me to read for it. I got the script, I read the script, and then I had a phone call with him. And that is always my preference because, the director's going to be the one making the film. I would like to know what they would want to do with the film before I try to give them some attempt at showing them what I would do with it.
Right.
So to be able to have that conversation is just a good place to start. The beginning of that conversation was Ty saying, in more or less this tone of voice, "Hey man, so why would you ever want to do a movie like this?" And I really appreciated that because the script is bizarre and dark, and some of those things, like they're gnarly to watch on film, but when you read them described on a page, it feels dirtier in a way. It feels like grosser. And I think he had a good sense that it would be easy for an actor to read this and go and think, why would I ever want to do this? So that showed me that he knew what he had on his hands. He knew what he was doing. And he was under no misapprehensions that this would be a crazy thing to sign on to do, a crazy world to live in for a little while. And then and my answer was basically like, I want to hear what you want to do with it. Mia is a very interesting actress, and I just want to know what you two are trying to do with it. And then he described to me his vision of this Technicolor, CinemaScope, golden age of Hollywood, kind of Wizard of Oz, Mary Poppins vibes, but obviously this dark and depraved story. And I just thought, this is a filmmaker who I trust to make a very interesting film. He obviously loves film and knows it very well, and had stuff that he wanted to do essentially independent of what I did. He said, I want to do stuff with sets and with the skies, and it sort of might kind of look like it's all shot on a back lot of a studio. And as an actor, I thought, great. I mean, the projectionist is an interesting character. There's not much told about him in the script, so to a certain extent, there's a blank slate that you can start from scratch with. So the real reason that I jumped in and decided to say yes was because I thought, this guy's going to make a great movie regardless of what I'm able to do with this character.
Well, but I mean, that's the fascinating thing about this character that you play, because I mean, on one end, he has to exist in a Douglas Sirk movie, but he also has to exist in a David Lynch movie, kind of simultaneously. Like, how did you kind of thread the needle and find this guy to sort of, that he would work in both places?
Honestly, I don't know. This was a great thing about working with Mia and Ty, is that we really played around. We had some rehearsal time, which is pretty rare, and so we got to do some exploring. And I always come in with some questions about, what world do you want me in? Do you want me to be this, sort of bizarre, conniving, like mysterious figure that feels otherworldly, which is sort of how I read it when I read the script?
Right.
Or do you want this to be like just a real guy? And his answer was mostly, I think, in the real guy kind of realm. I think he knew, and I didn't yet at that point, that his filmmaking was going to give you that bizarre, offbeat, a little bit foreboding feel. And so I, as the actor, didn't need to also layer that in too much. It was going to come through without me trying. So the real challenge was to make the guy likable and make him feel like he had good intentions. At least there was the possibility that he had good intentions. Right. So that in the end you end up with that threaded needle. I like, most of the films I like are ones where there are lots of things conveyed to the audience, and none of them is conveyed by more than one means. So the music should tell you one thing, the dialogue should tell you another, and the tone of voice of the actor should tell you a third thing.
Yeah.
And when you have great filmmaking with great camera work, great cinematography, great sound design, a beautiful score, and then great actors and interesting dialogue, you can convey 7 or 8 things in every scene.
For sure.
And each piece feels like it's necessary.
Now, I mean, I've got to imagine sort of that scene where you take her back to the farm, and you're this guy who's in control, and you're being super suave, and this, that, and the other, and then you realize that you're not in control of the situation at all. I mean, how interesting was it for you to play that without any sort of big flourishes? Because really you had to play it in the eyes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the hardest thing for an actor to play a scene. I mean, it's not the hardest thing. I find it incredibly difficult as an actor to play a scene where you kind of feel like you shouldn't be in the scene.
Yeah.
Where the character feels like they shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Because there's always this question of, why don't I just leave? Why don't I just leave? And you can get stuck not doing anything. And as an actor, it's really important to always know what your character is doing, what they're trying to accomplish, even if it's subtle, even if it's quiet. There's got to be something that they're trying to do, whether they're trying to figure the other person out or they're trying to, get something from the other person. And so to play these scenes, which were some of the first scenes we shot, where I just felt like I should run the hell away.
Yeah.
And to try to find a reason not to. The secret came, or the sort of key came when Ty sort of explained to me it's a situation where the reason to stay is that as soon as you've gotten to the point where you worry that terrible things are going to happen, the moment you reach that point, the thought has also occurred to you, if I leave suddenly, that may cause those terrible things to happen. So in the same moment where you think, I have to get the hell out of here, you also think, I have to do it so subtly that it won't backfire and I won't freak her out and make her feel like I figured out, the game is up, I get it, and she has to take care of me right then and there. It was a great way to start. A big challenge, but a lot of fun.
No, but I mean, that's such an interesting dynamic, too, because, I mean, that's not even something that ever occurred to me, because, I mean, there is that natural human moment of, I mean, we're in the audience and we're screaming, get the fuck out of there, but it's like, you're not doing that, but you have to sort of find a way to work through that. And, I mean, you don't necessarily see that in other genres, but you do in horror, like where you have to play this person, but you have to suppress so many natural human instincts at the same time.
Yeah, and it can be really fun to watch somebody where you're just like, they're just stupid. They just don't realize they're in horror. They're an idiot, any reasonable person. But I think the best situations are where you as the audience, you're screaming, just get out, but you also know in the back of your mind that if you were in that person's position, you wouldn't know enough to leave. Like there's still... And that's the great thing about Ty's filmmaking is the dramatic irony, where like the audience knows so much more than any of the characters, that even in those moments where you can say as an audience member, you just got to get out of the room.
Right.
You also can't blame the person for staying because they don't know what you know.
Exactly. No, I mean, I'm curious because, I mean, this is such a visually distinct film as well.
It's one of its big strengths.
When you're when you're in the moment, when you're shooting, like, are you conscious of how even sort of the visuals that are around you are almost a character in and of themselves that you have to interact with?
One of the biggest challenges working on this film was I had no idea except for what Ty told me.
Yeah.
And he painted a very beautiful picture, but when you get on set, there's no Technicolor in real life.
Of course,
everything it's beautiful costumes and beautiful sets, but you're just in this room, and especially when you know that it's supposed to be scary, dark, tense. There are a lot of moments where you're working and it doesn't feel like any of those things. It just feels like a normal conversation. And as the actor, you sort of think, am I letting down the side? Am I failing at my job?
Right.
There was a great moment when we were shooting the scene when I bring her back to my projection booth, which is a beautiful set, really dark and rich colors, rich kind of green color. And we had a great prop to work with, this big projector, 35 millimeter projector. And that was the first scene where I asked Ty, could I just take a glance at the monitor and see what it looks like through the camera? And 1 second was all it took for me to go, oh, I know exactly what movie you're making. I'm not worried about anything anymore. Like, this is going to work so damn well. Just the difference between what the camera... And that's the filmmaking. That's where Ty gets a ton of credit. Mia's performance is absolutely incredible. And a lot of that I saw happening in front of me. And as a scene partner, you just go like, this is amazing to watch. But Ty's filmmaking is really like, it's... I don't have the words to describe it. It carries the film in the same way that Mia's performance carries the film, maybe in slightly subtler ways, in ways that you wouldn't necessarily notice quite as much as you notice that tour de force performance of Mia's.
Yeah.
But he is that third character in the scene, behind the camera, with what he's doing with the camera, with what he's picturing in the cut, when he's thinking about where he's going to cut. That great shot of the axe coming down on the piece of wood, and when the wood splits, Mia's off in the distance behind it. Just that image, when you're doing it, you're just chopping wood or you're just walking through the field. But in Ty's mind, he knows that story seen through the eyes of the camera, that tells the entire story in that moment.
For sure. And I mean, your character as well, because I mean, this is so much different than X, because X was violence, this was corruption, it was depravity. This is sort of that bridge between the two. And I mean, your character really is sort of this, he's half hope and half corruption and sort of the real world at the same time. And I mean, I'm kind of curious, how do you think horror allows filmmakers and actors to play with such complex emotions? Because if you're trying to tell a story like this in another genre, it doesn't quite work. You definitely need sort of the space to be able to do it properly.
Well, you know, one of the things I wonder about this film is if there will be some real diehard horror fans out there who watch it and think it doesn't go far enough. And I wouldn't blame them for thinking that, but the thing I love about the film, and I love a good horror film, I loved X.
Yeah.
X was it was weird to leave the theater and say that was so much fun.
Yeah.
But that's what it was. The horror, the jump scares, the crazy camp moments that were such a great throwback to, you know, to classics. You just leave the movie going, what a wild ride, what a great time. I think Pearl is much more like a Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
Where
there
are certainly some horrifying moments and images, but it does allow a filmmaker to, I think, to use, it's essentially more of a metaphorical genre than telling it as a straight drama or as some kind of coming of age story, you know, to be allowed to have grotesque imagery and moments filled with so much tension that as an audience member you're physically uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Those elements act as a metaphorical device to tell the truth of the story deeper than you could by just watching somebody go through it.
Yeah.
You get the feeling of discomfort that Pearl has.
Yeah.
And it's not just from watching Pearl. I mean, obviously watching her is you feel for her and you connect to her, but it's cutting to the maggot-ridden pig or the rotting corn or the burnt flesh.
Yeah.
And in some way, because it's a movie, because it's two-dimensional, and you know you get to go home afterwards and you've got your popcorn, you gotta have that leeway to go a little further and push a little harder and dig the knife a little deeper to get people in their seats feeling those feelings.
And that's when it works, man. When, like, not necessarily with the jump scare, but when you're rubbing your arm, walking home, and it's like, man, that was fucked up. That was creepy. I mean, just to put a bow on this, I'm kind of curious. Like, obvious. Like, have you seen the film? Like, will this be the first time you get to see it with a crowd, or?
Yeah. So I got to see a screening of it. Luckily, it was in a theater. You got to watch it in a movie theater. I'm 50-50 on. I think it's great being able to watch movies at home, and sometimes I'm skeptical about, like, oh, you have to see this movie in a theater. This is a movie you got to see in a theater to get its full effect for two reasons. One, because it's filmed like an old Technicolor.
It's like a Douglas Sirk.
Yeah, exactly. You have to have that big screen, that larger than life, those brilliant colors, and also, and this is the experience I won't have until tomorrow night, but you got to see it with an audience. And I'm so curious to. Horror films are the films that you always have to see with other people, because one of the things that sort of is in relationship with that tension and the discomfort and the jump scares is being with other people, having that experience. So you get the jump scare or the incredibly intense, and then somebody laughs because they're so uncomfortable that the tension just needs to release, and that experience then ripples through the audience and you get that effect. It's another character in the film or another sort of aspect of the filmmaking. So I'm pumped for that.
Well, man, you're going to be in a theater with about 1,000 other people, and you're going to be feeling it.
It's a big theater.
It is a big theater, man. It's going to be a lot of fun, and just congrats on this, man, and thank you for the time today, man. I can't wait for more people to see this because, again, it's just one of those rides that, you know, you think there's 10, and then it takes you to 11 and to 12, and you're just like, you're going to love it.
I really appreciate it, man. I'm really excited about it, and proud to be a little part of it.
And have fun, man. This is your first film festival. Try to have a little bit of fun while you're here, too.
I'm already having fun. I mean, talking to you is fun, and
Excellent.
I'll find plenty of other ways.
Cheers. Thanks again, man.
Thank you so much.
All right.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.